Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Robert from Islam for Europeans. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Um, so I'm gonna, finally talk about my opinions on the election. I know normally I talk about, Islamic related topics related to converse and such, but I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. Um, Now, we all know what happened yesterday. There was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Um, and he survived and defiantly raised his fist in the air and said fight, fight, fight. um I was around many people. I'm not going to name names, but they can, they're medical professionals of many decades. They're saying that that this is fake, that like the blood is too red. um Other people are saying there's no way it could be fake because they'd have to move their, if Trump moved a millimeter in another direction, he wouldn't be alive. So my thoughts. Normally, I'm a big, massive conspiracy theorist when it comes to certain things, but I think, when it comes to, American politics, especially federal politics and the election, the main take-home message is that the two major parties don't really matter all that much anymore. They both have the same agenda. I'm not a Trump fan, nor have ever been a Trump fan, or even a fan of the Republican Party or the two-party system in general. And all across, the Western world, we have this first past the post system where, it's a winner take all, and whoever gets the most votes, or in this case, the most electoral votes, they win the election. And there's no consolation prize for any party. So what a first past the post system does is that you end up only having two major parties, because the people on the left are like, well, we don't want to vote, for someone who's more left than the center left party, because we don't want them to lose the election. And the people on the right are like, well, we don't want to vote for someone who's on the far right, because then the center right will lose the election. So they end up voting for these two major candidates and not really voting their heart. And in Canada, it's there's at least some opportunity for smaller parties to at least have a presence, because even it's not like an electoral a presidential election system where it's a winner take all for the president. You vote for the person in your riding, and then there's a chance that your member of parliament, even if they're from a smaller party, can win that riding, right? So but with the American system, it's the most extreme example of the first past the post system. And that's why, you only have two major parties, and any other party can not even get close to like even 5%. I think if you get like 5% in an American election, like a small party can get basic funding. In 2016, it looked like Gary Johnson was going to get, 13, 15% of the vote, because the two candidates were so unpopular. But after his gaffe with Aleppo, he only ended up getting like 3 or 4%. Um, so it becomes almost impossible to vote for your heart and vote for actual political change. And I can understand why a lot of Muslims, especially Muslims in the Muslim world, would make the argument that you know the people who are living in the West are responsible for what their governments have done because they basically elected them. I mean, technically that's true. I mean, like we should be politically aware and recognize that like we need to have more than a two-party system because it hasn't been working. But in another sense, it's almost impossible for these small parties to gain any traction. And on top of that, you have a rigged media system where they don't allow third-party candidates. Even in the Canadian system, it's a little bit better. Like if you get like a certain number of seats or percentage of the popular vote, you can engage in the debate. But with the like televised debates, I think only one time in American history has there ever been a third choice debating, and that was Ross Perot in 1992. So who if it's Trump, if it ends up being Trump and Biden, for the election, or one of two totally different candidates, or maybe even two totally different candidates. Let's say even the Democratic and Republican Party, they just like clean house and they started over with two different candidates. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. There's not going to be any significant changes. I mean, the only like mild change would be that Trump, is thinks that war is bad for business, but he said openly genocidal statements, on the debate. He thinks that that they should quote unquote finish the job. And then Biden is just as much of a warmonger, not just in the Holy Land, but also in with the Ukraine Russia conflict. You know, and in this election, you have what you think would might be a wild card in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Excuse me, but he's no different. I mean, he totally supports the establishment when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East. There are some other, kind of not establishment positions that he holds about COVID, about the Ukraine conflict, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, would he be technically better than the other two top candidates? Maybe, but I don't think he'll make any difference in terms of, the kind of grip that the powers have on Western governments in general. So you have the top three candidates that are basically pro-war, and they vehemently want to squash any opposition when it comes to that. Any type of free speech around that. They don't want to even open the conversation. So what are the American people left with? Well, let's look at the far left. You have basically three, left-wing candidates that are to the left of the Democratic Party who want to end, the war in Gaza. And that's the Green Party's Jill Stein. Now they actually have like an actual base and party. Like they have infrastructure, for a small party, where they have a logo and volunteers. They have pamphlets and whatnot. Jill Stein could get on interviews. So at least they have something. But for Muslims to vote Green, I mean, they do ally with other groups, minoritarian groups whose values are completely opposed to ours as well. Not as if the other two party candidates are also not opposed to these kind of worldviews, right? So you have Jill Stein of the Green Party. You have two other candidates. You have I forget their names already. Dela Cruz, and the I forget his name as well. There's two other candidates on the left who pretty much identical in terms of their opinions. I think they're even more far left. They're almost like Marxists. So people who are on the anti-war left are going to split their tiny section of the vote three ways. So think about it. A lot of third-party candidates are going to go to RFK, so you're going to be left with no more than like 5% of the popular vote. And the left wing, the anti-war left is going to switch between three different parties. Cornel West is the other person. So Cornel West, Claudia Dela Cruz, and Jill Stein. Those are the three candidates. So I can't see them getting any more than a couple percentage points, even with the massive protests that have been going on and the call for political change. And then you have the anti-war right, like you have which is the Libertarian Party, but libertarians went with the complete unknown in Oliver Chase, and Oliver Chase's lifestyle is not really compatible with the type of lifestyle Muslims lead. But even if you put that aside, the problem that the Libertarian Party has is that they cannot get any type of interviews or mic time or even debate with the anti-war left. And the anti-war left are the ones who are organizing these massive protests. I mean, the anti-war left is never, ever, ever going to have a libertarian come on and debate their ideas, because libertarians are, even though they're anti-war, they're also pro-capitalism. They're pro-free markets. They might be less woke. So for those reasons, libertarians are generally, stuck out of those discussions where they might actually garner potential votes. So now you have four anti-war candidates, three on the left and one on the right, who are going to split, whatever remaining votes are left after you take away our Robert F. Kennedy's votes. They're not going to get any more than a couple million votes, if that. Right. So it's, and this just goes to the fact that it's just a flawed system. I mean, like, if they were smart, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party would have their own debates. They would have their own like uh televised things. I mean, like, social media is huge now. They could host something like this, and people would watch it. But I don't think they'd be able to come to any type of conclusions or any type of agreement between the two sides. Right. So it just goes into my whole thing that, there really is no political solution in the West for the problems that we're facing. Like, I don't think that, being involved in the political voting system, as Muslims is completely ineffectual. But there's only so much that can be done. Like, there are some Muslims who make the argument that, if Muslims weren't in these parties, the anti-Islam sentiment among those parties would be even worse. I mean, look at, the fact that, you have Democratic Muslim candidates, like the Gang of Four, but at the same time, like, again, like they're, not following traditional Islam, right? So it becomes a major problem. So I'm going to conclude in a few seconds. Yeah, so it's the same thing throughout other, Western countries as well. It's a flawed political system, and it's very difficult for Muslims to know who to vote for because you vote for the left, you end up, allying with people whose values are completely opposed to yours, and you vote for the right, and they end up decimating Muslim countries all over the place, and many of their candidates are also very anti-Islam. And then if you go for small parties, I mean, usually, their results are pretty ineffectual. I mean, I don't even advocate, like, I know we're at Islam for Europeans. A lot of people believe that, we're far right, as our detractors say, but I don't believe in, allying with any type of political party. Like, like, unless you have some sort of like agreement that, you change, your theoretical, like a worldview, or have some type of agreement between these like kind of disparate groups, that would benefit all of them. But I don't think we're even at that point. You could see, throughout Europe, a lot of countries had recent elections. Rishi Sunak is out in the UK. Keir Starmer's in, but again, Keir is just as bad as Rishi is, on the conflict in the Holy Land. Um, and in France, it's only marginally better. I mean, obviously, anything's better than Le Pen in France. I mean, Le Pen is, one of the biggest figures on the anti-Islam right, and these all these political parties. The other thing you have to recognize is that these political parties are all on the anti-Islam right, and there's no political home, for people who are on the dissident right. So what happens is that they usually end up voting for these same parties, and I do think that's one important thing for Muslims to realize, because the more you keep, like, making these blanket statements about conservatives and, like, traditionalists, and lumping them all into the same boat, even though they may agree with us on certain things about, traditional lifestyles and, like, different educational agendas. If you keep insulting them, they're going to end up voting for the Le Pens of the world. They're going to keep voting for, Alternative for Deutschland. So I just think that's one thing to keep in mind. And when you have such close elections like this, it can be the difference between, them getting in as opposed to, more moderate candidates who are usually on the political left. But in conclusion, like I said, there's only so much you can do with politics, and very little. Like, it's a spiritual like problem that we need to address first. It's important to understand the political environment, I think, for Muslims. Like, I think it's really essential that we understand where these parties are coming from. As Ralph Nader said, if you don't look into politics, politics will look into you. But at the same time, you have to realize that, like, it's very little that you can do in a first past the post system. Right. So that's my time for the day. please let me know what you think in the chat. I'll have a more comprehensive video regarding my thoughts on the political right and like what Muslims should do about it. Should we ally with them? Obviously not, but at the same time, having principled stances, will I guess quell the idea that that these political parties who are supposedly on the right is going to solve their problems. All right, so that's my time for the day. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And that's my time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.